Manchester City are miles off it right now, absolutely miles off it, and that was showcased in the Arsenal and Liverpool game, and not by quality, because even though the game with Brighton was completely devoid of quality, I'm not talking about quality, even though it was missing from our performance against Brighton. I'm talking about solidity, I'm talking about cohesion, defensive know-how, no errors. No, there was a David Raya mistake in the first half. Other than that, it was defensive solidity that was well on its way to being a ball fest. Not the greatest advert for the Premier League, but the two best teams in the league going toe-to-toe and cancelling each other out for the majority of the game. I thought there was moments of brilliance here and there, but not really. It was decided by a worldy set piece by Szoboszlai, ultimately. But the purpose of this video isn't going to be player ratings, because I'm not throwing players under the bus in this situation, because Manchester City have a club-wide problem. It's club. It's not individuals, including Pep Guardiola. It's the collective. When you talk about mental perspective, I have banged on about it last season, and only now are people saying maybe it's a mental problem. Yes, I've been saying it for many, many years. Well, at least 1 year. At least 1 year. How do you achieve what has already been achieved? As in, it seems like there are no more records for Manchester City to break. I will always go on about the message on the wall in the dressing room. No side has ever won 4 Premier League titles in a row. That was plastered on the wall for all the Manchester City players as motivation. How do you remove that and add another level of motivation on top of that? Because these are records that have never been achieved in the sport of football in this country. Manchester City achieved the unachievable. So how do you go again? And that is a victim to our own success, effectively, is what we're dealing with here. So recruitment comes into it, and that is what this video is going to be about. And what we're going to be analysing is Manchester City's recruitment in this situation, because I don't think it's been good enough. But there's two aspects to this. One, it's not been good enough. Two, it's still retrievable. So there is going to be a positive feel to this video, potentially, for some, and others, there's going to a bit of therapy, a bit of situation where we're going to be looking at the negative and the fact that we have failed in certain aspects. And I want to compare it to Liverpool's situation, because back in 23-24, they had a midfield transplant. A complete overhaul of their midfield. As you can see, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch in, Henderson, Fabinho and Keita out. As well as Milner, as well as Oxlade-Chamberlain. Firmino was obviously a forward. He was out as well. So there was a big overhaul at Liverpool that season. They did not win the league because they were going up against a Manchester City, as within all football clubs, we're in a phase where we were at our peak, effectively. We had players, we had De Bruyne in his prime, 31, 32-year-old Kevin De Bruyne, compared to the aging 33, 44-year-old De Bruyne who started to age. Rodri was fit, first of all. Foden, player of the season. Haaland was still banging goals in for fun, left, right and centre. We had a completely settled squad. You know? And even the year before that, when we won the treble, which is an obvious thing to say, we were very good that year. Guess what? We won the treble. Shock horror, we were good. Pretty good that year. Looking further at what Liverpool have done, they have further bolstered their squad, bringing in Isak, Wirtz, Ekitike, Kerkez, Frimpong. Now, they already had won the league, but in between this season and the season where they had that midfield transplant, they settled. They had time to find their feet. They only won a League Cup. That's all they won. They did not go and win the league straight away with that midfield transplant. So these things take time. That's the positive aspect for Manchester City, that bringing in a host of players, while I still think there's massive areas that still need work, it wasn't doable in one transfer window. So we have to give the club and Pep a little bit more time and understanding to think that we weren't going to just overhaul 11 players. And if we did, even then it was going to be a problem, because you can't do that in football. Just throw 11 players onto the pitch and hope for the best. It takes time. This is not FIFA, people. You're not in control with your controller in your bedroom, okay? This is real world. Human beings are being dealt with, man-managed, you know? You have to take time. Squads take time to rebuild. This is not overnight. And Liverpool have been doing this for years. And they are now approaching their peak years, Liverpool. It's going to be difficult for Manchester City to get to that level again. But it's doable because we've done it before. We know we can do this in terms of rebuilding the squad. We got to sign bankers, no uncertainties. And the rebuild for Manchester City was a failure from the transfer window of 24-25. We know where we went wrong, because that's where the rebuild was made abundantly clear that we needed one. You know, bringing in Savinho and Gundogan and Savinho, can you consider them a success in that window? No, you can't. But then in January, that's when the rebuild was highlighted. It was only 6 months later. That's how quick we were able to identify it, because you can't go any quicker than that. One transfer to the next is as quick as you can go. You know, and there's only so much business you can do in January because it's in the middle of a season, unfortunately. So, Marmoush, Gonzalez and Kusanov, I know Juma Bar and I know Vita Heist, but the focus is on starting 11 quality, primarily is what we're going to be doing here. Right, now, where I get a bit more concerned is I'm looking at the departures versus incomings from 2023, the year after we won the treble, to 2025. Again, focusing on the starting 11 quality, first team guaranteed players, or at least on the bench. The 10 that have come in here, there are other players, I know this isn't everybody, but this is the key components to our starting 11. Departures, Palmer, Mahrez, Laporte, Gundogan, Cancelo, Alvarez, De Bruyne, Edison, Walker, Grealish. I've almost tried all the way up to 8 in terms of number. It's almost a like-for-like replacement, going all the way down to number 8, where the final 2 in Walker and Grealish haven't been replaced directly by Kovacic and Gonzalez, obviously. But for Palmer, yep, I think Doku was the reason Palmer left. Mahrez, he's got the same number as him, plays the same style of play. Savinho, Laporte for Vardiol, Gundogan for Reinders, Cancelo for Aït-Nouri, Alvarez for Marmoush, De Bruyne is supposed to be Cherki, Ederson, Donnarumma, still not technically done at the making of this video at least, but it's going to be the replacement. Walker and Kovacic and Grealish and Gonzalez. So I'm going to apply little symbols next to their names. How many of these are guaranteed certainties? Doku, question mark over him, because I think he very nearly got a cross. There's only one cross on here as a potential failed transfer, and I think that's Kovacic, because I just don't think it's worked out. I think he's been a good player for us and he's showed moments of brilliance. I just don't think it's worked out. Injuries have played their part, and over-dependency at times, and then when the Rodri's fit, we don't really need him. It's a difficult situation for Kovacic. But other players that are not getting crosses, Doku very nearly gets one. He's so close to getting a cross to his name and being considered a failure of a transfer, because he's been here for over 2 years now, and he's still not hitting the heights of certainly what Palmer's doing in a Chelsea shirt. We didn't know that Palmer was going to go and do that, so the club can be forgiven in that regard. Mahrez, we know how good he is. We know full well what he delivered in a Manchester City shirt. Is Savinho getting those numbers? In his first year, miles off it. Miles off it. He has got a ceiling that excites me. I think there is potential there. If he can get close to that Girona season, yeah, there is potential to be close to Mahrez. Laporte, Vardiol, that's arguably an upgrade. That's an upgrade. Good deal. Good business. Well done. Gundogan, Reinders, I think that's almost a banker. That's a stamped banker for me, because what I see in Reinders, he's ready-made, he's experienced, without being too old. I think he's the perfect signing for Manchester City. He didn't play well yesterday, but I still think he's going to be a super signing for Manchester City. Aït-Nouri, he nearly gets a tick for me, replacing Cancelo. He's close to getting a tick. I thought he was poor yesterday against Brighton, but still not a guaranteed certainty. Alvarez out, Marmoush in. Marmoush, brilliant yesterday. I thought he was our best player yesterday, but still, Marmoush, it's the position. It's the fact that Haaland's there. I'm not convinced. I don't know where he's going to get guaranteed minutes. On the left, that's his closest place to getting those minutes. But through the middle, no, not when Haaland's fit. You're not getting in the team. So I think there's going to be a moment in the future, not too far away, in my opinion, where Marmoush goes, I'm done, man. I'm not getting the game time, so I've got to go. You know? Cherki, I think there's such a player there, so young, and I mean, in terms of the money that we paid for him, you can argue from the financial aspect that it's a brilliant signing. I think there's a guaranteed success there because of the player potential. He looks sensational on his day. He looks brilliant. Ederson, Donnarumma, massive question marks over that. No idea how this one's going to work out. This is almost a complete system change because of that goalkeeper coming in. Exciting shot-stopping ability, but there's areas to his game that will need work. You know, he's not an Edison, but that same question would be applied to any goalkeeper that we sign. Any goalkeeper. Because there's a certain level of uncertainty when you're talking about Edison, because he's unbelievable with the ball at his feet. Kovacic, like I said, a failure, and Gonzalez, it's still question marks over his success as a transfer for Manchester City. I'm not convinced. Now, you put that on the pitch, this is what I would consider, in terms of talent, the best 11 for Manchester City in terms of overall talent. You can argue about who should play where. Should Cherki be on the right? Probably not. I think Oscar Bob deserves a start in terms of tactical reasons, and I don't think Cherki should be pushed out wide. But in terms of out-and-out ability, just putting your best players on the pitch to make an 11 and still having some sort of respectable formation that could arguably work, this, for me, would be the best 11 for Manchester City. You then compare that to our bench, to the other 11 that are left outside of this, our official starting 11, or my official starting 11 anyway. So we do have squad depth. We can't argue with squad depth, but we can argue with the fact that in our starting 11, we've got Rico Lewis, who for me is not a fullback. And the other fullback on the opposite side is also not a fullback. So that's area number one for me. Not been established, not been fixed. I think we look at the bench in terms of Jeremy Doku and Savinho, the wingers. Ryan Cherky for me probably isn't a winger. And Marmoush, he isn't a winger, but he's in those positions in the best starting 11 because I've shoehorned them in, as does Pep Guardiola. If you want out-and-out wingers, Jeremy Doku and Savinho, are they working as transfers? They're not delivering. They're not getting the numbers we need them to get. So are they working? That's an area for concern for me. I think Gonzalez and Rodri, I'm brilliant with that. I think that's a world-class Ballon d'Or winner being backed up by an absolute talent in Nico Gonzalez. That's a great area of the pitch for Manchester City right now. Pleased with that. I think Bernardo Silva, he brings a bit of experience. I think centre-backs, we've got reasonable cover. The goalkeeper's massive uncertainty, but the question remains is there are huge areas of the pitch for me, in particular in right back and in particular out wide, where we are just not covered. Centre-backs in terms of numbers were there. In terms of quality, Ruben Diaz has been flat. He's been flat this season, and I think Josko Vardiol coming back will be a great addition to the squad, a very much needed addition to the squad. John Stones, I think he's been doing all right this season, but as a back four, Rico Lewis, John Stones, Vardiol and Ryan Aït-Nouri, it's the right back position. It just stands out like a sore thumb, doesn't it? As it has done all season. So you've got to point questions at Manchester City's recruitment because we need bankers. We need certainties. Like Erling Haaland was just like, there was no debating. Is he going to work? Isn't he going to work? There was no maybe. There was no debate. There's no debate. We need non-debatable transfers. That's what we need. Guaranteed certainties at Manchester City. We absolutely need that. Blues, where do we go from here? I want to hear your thoughts. Manchester Derby up next. Arsenal after that. If we don't win those games, or at least if we lose those games, we're out of the title race. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. 5 games into the season. And our upcoming fixtures are terrifying because of the results we've just gone through. It's a tough time for Manchester City, but I do want to end on the note that we can fix this. Players coming in through the right means, the right positions, being occupied by the right players. It's got to be correct decisions, though. No more maybes, no more possibilities, no more potential. We need to live in the now and get these players fixed right now. And in January, we should absolutely be looking at the right back position. It has to happen. It has to happen. But massive concerns for me. Massive concerns. Let me know your thoughts, Blues. Like and subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is typical City now, holding up silverware.